What an incredible episode, witches! My goodness, what spell has Jack Schaefer cast on Marvel Disney Plus that we finally have good episodes again? This is right up there with the best episodes of WandaVision. It's incredible. It was a little disorienting, though. We'll talk about the amazing ending first in just a moment, but I do want to say up front that it was a little disorienting because after 2 episodes of establishing very strong patterns, a lot of that seemed to get just, thrown to the wind. However, I do believe that I've gotten to the bottom of what was actually going on here. I figured it out while I was doing my notes for this episode, and I've left it the way I wrote it because I could have rearranged it once I figured it out, but I wanted you to go through the same thought process that I did, so that you could see how I came up with it, and you could go down that road with me. All right, so we're only halfway through the season, and Wiccan is here already. Oh my goodness! Now, for those of you who don't understand why the rest of us are just totally losing our minds, it's because Wiccan is an extremely popular character in the comics, but not just any character. He is, I would argue, the most popular gay comic book character in mainstream comics. There are other characters for sure, but I'd say he is the most popular. And also, I would also argue the most powerful. I don't know. Some might be a little, I think he's really powerful. Because in fact, in some stories, he even becomes the Sorcerer Supreme. They have different futures, stuff like that. And also, of course, he's Wanda's son, Billy Maximoff, all grown up. And if her son is here, that means Wanda can't be too far behind. I think she's a couple of projects behind, but this confirms that Wanda will return pretty soon. I think her family are going to be breadcrumbs working their way back to her. Now we have one of her sons. We got to get her other son, and of course her husband. So we'll get there eventually. But what an entrance, complete with a crown like his mother. We're going to talk about that. He doesn't have a crown in the comics. It's such a good idea. He has like a headpiece, but not a crown like Wanda. Yes, a crown like mother, and the perfect Billie Eilish song to go with it. To herald his arrival, you should see me in a crown. It's beautiful. Perfect. But let's calm down a little bit and figure out again what's going on in this episode, because even though it was pretty short, so much happened. I mean, they were moving at a very fast pace. It was incredible. I think he definitely sigiled himself, by the way. I think that's definitely what he did. So as not to give away his true identity, but not to look like he was hiding anything. And remember, the person who casts the spell doesn't know that they cast it, so that he would not be acting odd, because he wouldn't even think to act oddly. So I hope maybe up next we maybe get an origin story as to how Billy got so big. So that's going to be really, really interesting. I do, as many of us, all of us kind of agree that car crash that's been referenced, I think we all think is probably going to factor into that. But yes, he sigiled himself. I guess also it will be destroyed when it's no longer needed. It's not needed anymore. Agatha figured it out, and then he gave himself away. So that's fantastic. So it will dissolve next week. At first, I was like, he was playing in them the whole time. He already had power. But no. Pay attention to the title of the episode, which of course is another lyric from the Witch's Road ballad. Darkest hour, then ominous slow fade up with the rest of the title, Wake Thy Power. I believe that's the first time they did a secondary reveal on the title, although we all knew it was coming because we all know the song so well at this point, but that was pretty neat. Darkest hour. You knew something good was going to happen when that title came up. You were like, oh boy. I think Agatha made him so angry, going full villain, not only figuring out his identity, but mentioning his mother, who she tormented, and I think that's what finally awakened his power. Just like when Wanda was finally activated in WandaVision. And he is very powerful right off the bat. Not just with the blasts, but I didn't notice this until I was going back over through the episode. He's controlling Lilia and Jennifer in the end. You can see the blue in their eyes, just like Mother. Not only did she control people in WandaVision, but you could see her red light in the eyes, for instance, in Age of Ultron. So, and again, this is just episode 5, and he's this powerful off the bat. We have 4 more episodes to go. How much more powerful will Wiccan get during this season? I hope he flies. I want to see him float around because he does a lot in the comics, just like his mother. Now, we also saw him fly even earlier in the episode on a broom. Oh, I thought that was just such a wonderful sequence. I also want to point out that Agatha All Along is proving to be a very progressive show, and it was both old school and new to see these witches on their broomsticks joined by a young man. I thought that was very powerful, and I bet it moved a lot of people watching the episode. I think what Jack Schaefer is doing for the LGBT community, LGBTQ community here is really commendable and amazing, and high time after a lot of promises have been made by Disney and not delivered on. So that was just a really incredible sequence, including the ritual of how you got a broom by getting a broom for another witch, although it was funny when some of them didn't like the brooms that had been selected for them. And also to see them enjoying a part of their powers that they'd cut off for themselves because they didn't like what brooms had come to represent, not only for witches, but for women. But yet it's part of who they are, and they don't have to reject it if they don't, just because they don't want it to totally define them. How's that for an interesting thing to consider? And so they were able to really end up reveling in it, and it really felt not only magical and wonderful, but I think powerful. I love the way they flew around like that. That was just, I thought that was really emotional. Back to Wiccan, though. Everybody, let's talk more about Wiccan. All right, eagle-eyed fans on the internet have pointed out that even his look this week mimics Wiccan's costume. But then again, as I said, here is the significant change. Wiccan has never had a crown like Wanda in the comics. This is a new idea introduced by the show, and I could not love the idea more. Not only because, of course, why wouldn't he have a crown like his mother, but also it's a very gender-bending idea, especially this version or style of a crown. I really think it's fantastic. I think you're going to see a ton of Wiccans at Halloween. And it's nice of them, actually, when you think about it, to debut the look a little bit early so you have time to work on your costume as the finale airs the day before Halloween. That's very kind of them. Does anyone here think they might be going as Wiccan for Halloween this year? I'm really impressed that Disney approved this because, again, it's perfect. And again, Disney owes their LGBTQ fans. All right, so now he's got his power before he hits the end of the road. So what's he going to ask for? What's he going to want? Is it going to be Wanda? I don't think he's going to get Wanda directly. I don't think she's going to show up at the end of the road. But I wouldn't be surprised if he got the next piece in the puzzle to put his entire family back together. Aw. Because, like, how can you have the upcoming Vision show and Billy's not there? Being like, hey, Pops, what's up? We got to go find Tommy and Mom. All right, so maybe he is going to be on the show. I mean, I would think it would be odd if he was not. Also, do you want Wanda fans to watch Vision or don't you? All right, so next big question. How did Agatha find out? Well, I went back and I looked at the episode, and she seemed to start to piece it together when Lilia says death comes for us all. But Wanda isn't death, although she is dead. So the dead might come for us all. And in a trial where all of Agatha's enemies have come after her, it's more than this. I'm cooking. Let me cook. I'm going to serve you up a nice bowl of answers. So she says, I think it's like maybe that's why she thinks of Wanda, a very powerful witch that she very much wronged, right? And alas, she knows for sure now that Teen isn't her son, Nicholas Scratch. I saw some people, one of you sent me a tweet, somebody figured out that, well, one giveaway is that Teen is able to say the name Nicholas Scratch, even though he'd been sigiled. So if he was Nicholas Scratch, he wouldn't be able to say that. But also, sadly, very hauntingly, we hear at least her son's voice, the spirit, and clearly he's very young, which is so sad. He was in that cabin, along with Agatha's mother, all the Harkness generations together. Grandmother, mother, and son. A family, a broken family, just like Wanda's. Oh, I love it. And when Agatha figures it out, there's more. Don't worry, there's more coming. You got to watch my whole breakdown. I'm walking you through it. But when Agatha figures it out, she quickly gets back in her game because she realizes she's facing a potential adversary. Although at that point, she thinks he's still powerless and says, "Come with me, pet," but not in a nice way anymore. And I think maybe that's also what angers Billy and awakens his power. The witch who tormented his mother now thinks she can do the same to him. Billy was there! Remember, Billy was there. He was there the whole time. In fact, that's his former babysitter. I hope maybe they make a funny joke about that. And with his power, well, he definitely punishes Agatha. He punishes all the witches. Although, does he? I have a theory on that as well. So that was what stopped the trial, it seemed, realizing that Nicholas Scratch was there, who pleaded for his mother to stop. His mother claims she can't control it. Was that the point of this trial? To maybe make Agatha stop hurting other witches, less like her mother? More like her son? I wonder. A little too late for Alice, though. She's dead. Not only are we 5 episodes in and we already have Wiccan, but we now have 2 dead bodies. Mrs. Hart and now Alice. We'll talk about the Mrs. Hart thing. Which makes me surprised a certain detail that has not been revealed yet has not been revealed. I'm like, what are you waiting for? Although, as Rio pointed out last episode, Agatha does what she always does. Steals other witches' powers and leaves behind bodies. Oh, it came true. Another thing that came true, by the way, I saw somebody else, another of you sent this to me, that somebody noted that Lilia's premonition, one of them came true, saying, Alice, don't. That's what she said in an early episode. And also, save Agatha. In fact, it wasn't to save Agatha, but it was the opposite. Alice, don't save Agatha. So I'm like, that's no fair that they're out of order. Come on, man. But, I'll allow it, even though I kind of don't like it. All right. And isn't it interesting, considering another spoiler, but anyway, that Agatha's symbol is death, the blood moon, because, wink, wink, again, for those of you who know a certain spoiler, she's a killer. But before we break down the trial itself, at the beginning of the episode, we see the Salem 7 access the Witch's Road. As the summoning spell they used to get a new green witch left the door open, as Lilia puts it. And all those animals we saw in episode 2, well, it turns out they were the Salem 7, again, because they can turn into animals. And who continue to move very much like Dark Wanda, which means they must also be powered by dark magic. Who are they? We find out they're the children of the witches that Agatha killed back in Salem, who she let live, clearly because at that point she'd already lost her son. Did he have power? Oh, I just thought of that right now while I'm recording. Did maybe she accidentally take her son's power? And that's why her mother thinks she's evil? Oh, maybe that's part of it too, I wonder. Maybe that's part of it too. Maybe that's why what could make a mother turn on her daughter? That could be it. That's pretty bad. That's fascinating. All right, so I think she'd already lost her son at that point, so she could not take anyone else's children. But mistake, children always come back to take vengeance for the parents. Just like Billy. Oh, that's nice. That's nice how that works out. We got a lot of kids looking for vengeance or, trying to avenge their parents. Oh, Avengers. Well, they made it. I think that's just phenomenal. I think that's brilliant. I think it's incredibly clever. Mwah, 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 mwah. So good. And maybe that helped tip Agatha off as well, as this episode seems to be about parents and children. That's very interesting. Even in the trial, Lilia was the mom at the sleepover. They weren't all teenagers. So they ran in so fast into this cabin that we never saw the moon symbol that was on the door. So we don't know what the death would have been. If there even was one. I think that's interesting. They just skipped over that. I'm like, whoa, we established rules here. But the trial starts with the Ouija board. Great line where Agatha's like, Ouija is not a verb. Because Teen's like, we must Ouija. I'm like, I don't know. I kind of like it as a verb. And the timer is everyone's electric watch. So 80s. Although I don't know why a witch from Salem would have a trial that was 80s themed. But again, I think it's because it's, I'll just say it here. Teenagers? Teen? Get it? I think that's also very clever. One game they should have played, I think also would have worked very well with this, would be Truth or Dare. I think that's a game that Agatha certainly would not want to play. Sure enough, Agatha's mother returns. And as we can see, Rio is right to defend her ex-girlfriend because Agatha's mother is so cruel to her. Although again, maybe she has good reason too. And it's likely a big part of why Agatha is the way that she is. The ghost effect of Agatha's mother materializing, 10 plus, no notes. I was enthralled. I absolutely adored it. I was like, you didn't have to go that hard, but I'm so glad you did. We also got an exorcism theme going on, right? I love this. Listen to this. With Agatha's mother possessing her body, which when you think about it, is what it's like in real life with parents and children, is they possess us in a way. Don't you sometimes feel like your parents are taking over, right? Like you're becoming them? And maybe Agatha, again, as I said, needs to truly get her mother out of her to not, that's one theory. I kind of like this new theory about what the other thing might be, but I think that's very interesting. Maybe her mother was bad, and so Agatha is bad. I'm curious to see if we get some more answers here. And maybe that's why Agatha figures out the teen is Billy, because in many ways he is possessed by his own mother as well. They're so similar. And I like that Agatha points out that, like mother, like son, both pretend to be oh so good, oh so much better than her. I think that's a big part of it as well. But in reality, are they? I mean, Wanda got pretty evil there, not only in Multiverse of Madness, but of course, that was the Darkhold, but also at the end of WandaVision. Well, at least Agatha thinks she was pretty mean, right? She put her in that, locked her in that spell. And what does Billy do? He turns on everyone. Or does he? I think like Wanda, deep down, he's a kind person. They're both troubled. It's hard being a witch. But I think next week we'll see what he really did. I think there's a chance he might have thrown them off the witch's road. Because, there's that shot of Jennifer crawling out of the ground into the regular world. I think maybe he threw them out of the road because he doesn't want there with him anymore and he's going to walk the rest of it himself. So I'll be curious to see how they get back in. That's interesting. Although he didn't throw Rio out, did he? All right, as for Agatha, you know what? I got to say, I believe her. Do you? I don't think she can control it. I think something takes over, like we saw, like a hunger or something that takes over her. Also, that can't be the last that we hear, literally, Nicholas Scratch, right? I believe he might be waiting for Agatha at the end of the Witch's Road as well. In fact, I really hope that he is, because I've been quite moved by Agatha's plight. Alas, poor Alice. She did kill Alice. She was still working overtime as a protection witch this episode, by the way, which makes it even sadder. Looking after Teen, making sure he got a broom, and who stepped up to save Agatha? She did. Again, very sad, very sad. I was like, could you maybe try to put the power back in? Maybe this is a two-way street. I mean, they said, Billy was like, get away from her. But I'd be like, can you undo this mess? I can't believe how quickly, though, the rest of the coven turned on Agatha before the Alice stuff. Obviously. But earlier than that, I mean, Agatha's pretty selfish and has an attitude and a horrible track record. But within the course of this show, I think she's been pretty nice, especially considering who she is, and a pretty good leader. I wouldn't have turned on her like that. Would you have? I mean, although, I don't know. I would. Who's to say you're not next if they're not a witch's code? All right, and even with all this drama, there were still some great laughs this episode as well. I loved when Rio did a witch's cackle as they were hurtling towards the ground on their brooms. I thought that was fantastic. Rio also regular laughed. It was either like a, yeah, right, or a, oh yeah, when they said that death was in the room. I love that, and some of us, again, know why she did that. Agatha pretending to be Mrs. Hart, that was fantastic. I think that Catherine Hahn did such a good impression of Deborah Jo Rupp, I think that's the name, right? I was buying it. I was like, great callback. What a fun way to bring Mrs. Hart back in the mix. So I was actually a little disappointed that was not actually what was happening. I was like, that would have been great. But maybe that's one of the reasons that the moment sold so well, and that was intentional on behalf of the writing team. So again, so well done. I also loved when Jennifer took out her retainer and put it in its case before she was going to take care of Agatha. I thought that was such a funny moment. I loved it. And also, I thought it was very touching that Rio refused to abandon Agatha. She not only defended her earlier in the episode, but she would not leave her. I mean, she covered for it, saying, I'm not going to let her mother have her. But I think she just didn't want to leave Agatha. And Agatha, once again, had some fantastic lines. My two favorites this episode were, and people ask me why I don't have female friends, and stop embarrassing me in front of my friend's mom. That was fantastic. Who had the best look this week? It was hard to tell. It was very dark in that cabin. I think I have to give first place to Teen, a.k.a. Billy, because it, again, references his character in the comics. So that's quite clever. And runner-up, I'm going to go with Jen. I think she looked teen-erific in her outfit. I really liked it. Although, shout out to Alice's abs. Those were impressive, Alice. Alice, gone too soon. So what did you think of this week's episode? And so many of you have waited and hoped that Teen was Wiccan. And some of you hoped that he wasn't. Well, now that he finally is, and you've seen it, what do you think? Share your thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.